imprisoned in here for a long, long time. We know we were punished, though we've committed no crime, to fight for our country and die perhaps, but we're here because we happen to be Japs. We all love life and our country best. Our misfortune to be here in the West. To keep us penned behind that damn fence is someone's notion of national defense.
There once was a time where America, the land of the free, the home of the brave, and the land of opportunity, became a land of captives, a home of hysteria, and a land of stolen dreams. As other ethnicities, Japanese immigrants initially came to America hopeful and desperate for the benefits and promises of the American dream. Due to a significant turning point event, all Japanese American dreams and hopes for the pursuit of happiness and prosperity were taken from them. The stage was set with the commencement of World War II, igniting the fear of Japanese ancestry in the American nation.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Congress voted for war on Japan. The incident of Pearl Harbor caused America's anxiety to multiply due to threatening Japanese spies and air invasions. In addition to the threats, there were thousands of Japanese Americans living in America who simply appeared to be the enemy. As a civil reaction, signs were posted, propaganda was printed, and news media was publicly released, displaying the perilous Japanese enemy throughout America.
So Pearl Harbor is not the natural starting point, but certainly after Pearl Harbor, people had a pretext or a reason for accusing Japanese Americans of being spies for Japan, and they pointed to the Pearl Harbor attack as justification, the shock of the surprise attack as justification for their suspicion and hatred of Japanese Americans.
This caused Japanese Americans to be disrespected by the public for having the physical appearance of the enemy. This ethnical tension caused racial segregation and hysteria to escalate in America, adding on to pre-existing prejudice towards Japanese Americans. The frightened people of America demanded for a sign from the government that there was a retaliation and retribution towards the attack of Pearl Harbor.
On February 19, 1942, the national hysteria led President Franklin D. Roosevelt to sign the Executive Order 9066, authorizing and prescribing regulations for the conduct and control of alien enemies. This presidential order authorized the removal and relocation of 112,000 Japanese Americans without a hearing or trial, giving them a 2-week notice to take only what they could carry.
At 16 and head of the family, got to thinking about the German concentration camps, and you're saying, hey, we're going into something like that, the death camp, so to speak. What would you think? I mean, how would you feel, for something like that, Because you never know what kind of camp they're going to send us to.
The loyal Japanese Americans were forcibly retired from all that they loved, leaving behind their homes, businesses, and farms. Most Japanese Americans arrived at the concentration camps unemployed, homeless, and sometimes separated from their families as if they were the enemy lurking to strike.
They've sunk the posts deep into the ground. They've strung out wires all the way around, with machine gun nests just over there, and sentries and soldiers everywhere.
Camp that we went into, the county fairgrounds, it had barbed wire fences, and of course the guards, and then they're all saying, hey, the guards were there for our protection, But no, the guards were pointed out inwards. not outward. So it's not actually a protection for the people coming in, the outside world. So the guards had towers, of course, with guns pointing at us.
On September 8, 1942, Fred Korematsu and the Psy perceived the violation of civil rights and challenged Executive Order 9066, refusing to be relocated. Korematsu declared the order as racial profiling and was then convicted for defying military orders. For that, he was given a 5-year probation. On March 27, 1944, he appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and by December 18, the court reached a 6-3 verdict, voting executive order as a justified military necessity for circumstances of emergency and peril. Korematsu was then sent to Camp Topaz until given the permission to leave. Fred was the voice of the voiceless Japanese Americans, notifying the public of the self-evident violation of human rights.
On May 8, 1945, World War II ended. The racial fears disintegrated and led to the full release of all Japanese Americans. Returning from the camps, the Japanese Americans came to find their homes and property gone or owned by another American family. The Japanese Americans had been deprived of everything and had to re-establish themselves in the society that they were once a part of. On August 10, 1988, President Ronald Reagan took initiative in officially recognizing America's mistake on the internment camps of Japanese Americans. Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 into law, writing a presidential letter of apology to each Japanese internee. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush signed another bill to deliver $20,000 as a compensation of their losses. America as a nation had admitted their own errors and widened the path for equality, showing political leadership in civil liberties, reassuring that such a tragic mistake would not reoccur.
As a turning point in history, Korematsu symbolized all relocated and detained Japanese, standing firmly for constitutional rights amongst the injustice of the executive order. In 1983, the Korematsu vs. United States case was reopened, and due to racial prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership, the court cleared Korematsu's conviction. Fred was then awarded the Medal of Freedom by President Bill Clinton. After the terrorist attack on September 11, 2001, Korematsu stood up for all American Muslims, warning the government not to take radical measures in the midst of hysteria.
The deliberate relocation of the Japanese Americans was to distinguish the loyal from the disloyal, except there was not a single case of a disloyal Japanese American. The Japanese American internees have tested the definition in "we the people." In times of hysteria and distress, we have to understand that the we and we the people are united Americans, and despite racial differences, we are bound by the Constitution, willing to stand and defend itself from our adversaries.
The internment of Japanese Americans is a turning point in American life for many reasons. First, it affected American culture and law a great deal. It's the first time in modern times that a government has acted that way against its own citizens, and it showed what racism can do in a time of emergency.
America now anticipates that it is willing to boldly protect their future by the remembrance of the past.
The incarcerations, persecutions, and racial prejudice of the Japanese Americans were a turning point because it perpetuated the establishment of civil rights by conserving political and social freedom and equality. What do you think is your message to the future?
I and some of the others recognize what happened, and we want to just show that we hope it never happens to anybody, any race, any type of thing.